The heavyweight title picture has officially been turned on its head. After the total chaos of UFC 294's fight week, MMA fans may have expected something a little more straightforward for UFC 295. But when the news broke that the champ Jon Jones was forced to withdraw due to injury, all of a sudden the chances of us seeing stability at heavyweight anytime soon dropped dramatically. Jones versus Stipe Miocic was the originally scheduled matchup, and though it's a good fight on paper, it seemed pretty clear that both men were eyeing up retirement once it was done. The weight class has a new batch of promising contenders hanging around the top, guys like Sergei Pavlovich, Tom Aspinall, Jailton Almeida, and you can even count Cyril Gane in that group. In other words, the division is ready to move on, and Jones versus Miocic seems set to be the last major clash of this older era. But with this injury to Jon Jones comes some very interesting problems. Jon will likely be out for 6 to 8 months with an injury like this, and Stipe, who is on the wrong side of 40, doesn't seem to be eyeing up a return to the cage for anything other than a title shot. The UFC has created an interim title for the UFC 295 co-main event, and in some ways it's about as good as an actual undisputed championship fight. The circumstances are not ideal, but Tom Aspinall has agreed to step in on short notice and risk his stellar UFC record against the fearsome Russian powerhouse Sergei Pavlovich, who had already been training to serve as backup for Jones versus Miocic. That is one hell of a co-main right there, folks. And just like the main event between Jiří Procházka and Alex Pereira, there's a very good chance that this one doesn't make it out of the first round. But here's the issue. What happens to the winner of this fight? Sure, they get to take home an interim title and the biggest win of their career, but if the champion Jones is going to be out for 6 to 8 months, and then he has to sign a fight with Stipe Miocic and go through an entire training camp, there's a good chance that the interim and undisputed belts won't be unified for over a year. And that's a very long time for a division to be kept on ice. Will this interim champ eventually decide to defend their title as if it were the real thing, like Renan Barrio did at 135 pounds back in the days when Dominic Cruz was injured? And will Stipe get bored of sitting on the sidelines and risk losing the Jones fight by challenging for the interim belt? There's a chance that Jones doesn't ever come back, although it is doubtful. For all the intents and purposes, this fight between Sergei Pavlovich and Tom Aspinall should be looked at as a legitimate title fight. The future of the division is being decided here, folks. So how do they match up? Well, if Aspinall was coming in on a full training camp, gearing specifically towards dealing with a guy like Sergei, it might be easier to back him. But Pavlovich is an absolute nightmare in that first round, and for as much as Aspinall's quick hands and boxing skills will make him a threat, he also does get hit. And with a guy like Pavlovich in front of you, even the slightest mistake could have dramatic consequences. We just saw what could happen when a great fighter tries to perform after a less than ideal camp, when Volkanovski tried to build on his excellent performance in his first fight against Islam Makhachev. And there's an eerie similar feeling to this UFC 295 co-main event. Aspinall is an excellent and dangerous striker, but grappling is his bread and butter. His wrestling is decent, but it's hard to see it as a major strength against a guy as physical as Pavlovich. And let's not forget that Sergei has his own background in wrestling, having trained in Greco-Roman since he was 5 years old, before then switching to Sambo. Aspinall's best route to victory might be in his BJJ, but it's getting the fight to the mat that will prove to be tricky. Pavlovich deserves to be favored here, and his most likely route to victory will no doubt be a vicious first-round KO. The big question then will be what Jon Jones chooses to do. There's at least one more fight in his future. That's a pretty safe bet to make. And in all likelihood, seeing him return next summer to take on Stipe Miocic is quite possible. But how do you actually sell that fight if Miocic hasn't fought in 3 years, and there's a deadly Russian knockout artist sitting there with an interim title? Could Jon Jones actually risk it all and take on a hard-hitting heavyweight who is straight out of this new modern generation of fighters? He'd be coming off a year-long absence with only 2 minutes of octagon time in about 4 years. If Jon Jones decides to do this, it will represent the biggest risk he has ever taken in his career. And let's be real, Jones has had some serious problems in recent times with keeping the fan base on his side. His last run of performances at 205 pounds were underwhelming, and when he did eventually debut at heavyweight, despite putting on an insanely impressive show against Gane, most fans choose to blame Cyril for the loss. It was almost like people were underwhelmed or disappointed at how easy Jones made it look. He's the GOAT in many people's eyes, but there are so many asterisks involved with the Jon Jones story that it can be hard for a lot of people to fully give him credit. And when this fight with Miocic was booked, the fanbase was pretty disappointed. We all love Stipe, but he is just not a factor in the modern landscape at heavyweight. And for the first time in years, it seems as though there is new talent breaking through. But Jones, by taking this fight, is basically choosing to ignore them. A fight with Pavlovich, or even Aspinall? Those are the big fights that are left for Jon. Those are the legacy-defining wins that would add a new level of intrigue to this late portion of Jones' career. The risks would be huge, especially if he spends the next 8 months sitting out. And there's a very good chance that this long-time light heavyweight champion would eat a clean shot. In other words, the possibility of seeing Jon Jones out cold on the canvas has never been higher. But the question is whether he'll actually take a fight with an up-and-comer before hanging up his gloves for good. Because the fact that Jones was so interested in an aging Stipe Miocic tells you a lot about his overall vision. The man has nothing more to prove within the sport, yes, but it is disappointing that he's not sticking around for a long time at heavyweight. So with that all in mind, it's pretty clear that the UFC 295 co-main event might as well be a real title event. Sure, they won't call the winner an undisputed champion, but the fighter who manages to get the victory here will likely be the fighter who leads the division into the new era. And this era will probably not contain Jon Jones or Stipe Miocic. These two will more than likely fight next year, and if the likely result happens and Jones gets the win, both men will probably retire then and there. And just like Pereira was promoted to undisputed champ at bantamweight after 2 defenses of his interim belt, the winner of Pavlovich and Aspinall will probably get their promotion to the position of full champion when this happens. It ain't a bad thing either. Heavyweight needs the chance to breathe, and after watching Stipe and Daniel Cormier having a long and drawn-out trilogy, and then after us losing another champion, Francis Ngannou, to a contract dispute, the most historically significant weight class in the sport could really use some normality. UFC 295's headliner between Jiří Procházka and Alex Pereira should be a total banger, but the fight with the biggest impact on the sports landscape will undoubtedly be contested in the co-main event. Will it be the powerful Russian Sergei Pavlovich who finds his opponent's chin and gives his nation yet another high-profile champion at the top of the sport? Or will Tom Aspinall pull off one hell of an upset, taking out the hardest hitter in the division on short notice to give England their 3rd UFC champ? It doesn't have the glitz and glamour of Jones versus Miocic, but that's one hell of a storyline, there can be no doubt about that. UFC 295 might be a little lacking on star power beneath the top 2 fights, but the main and co-main event double bill is just about as insane a pair of matchups as you are ever likely to see.